Hey everyone, this is Leo, your MC for today. Yeah, that's my picture on the screen. If you don't know me, I am the lead director of Altos Hacks, which is a 24-hour high school programming event, or hackathon, scheduled for March. Unfortunately, that did not happen because of the situation we are in right now. But don't worry, the hackathon has not been cancelled. We still have all the swag and prizes waiting for you to get, and we will let you all know when a date has been set for the hackathon. To compensate for the hackathon, we are hosting this online Intro to Web Design workshop, which is what you are all here for. Today, we are going to go through an online beginner's guide to HTML and CSS made by our friends at Hack Club. The link is on the screen below, the Hack Club logo. I will also put a link in the live stream chat right here. While you are entering in that URL, let me talk a little bit about Hack Club. Hack Club is a nonprofit organization that helps educate young people in programming. More than an organization, it is a family of leaders, programmers, students, and people who love onesies. Yeah, they really do love the dinosaur one too. So I would definitely recommend that you check them out at hackclub.com. Alright, so before we get started, for those of you who have signed up to the workshop, you should have received the joining info of our Zoom meeting. Once you hop onto the Zoom meeting, you will be directed to a breakout room where you will meet your mentor. Thank you, mentors, for volunteering to help our attendees. Attendees, don't be afraid to ask questions to your mentors in the Zoom. That is what the Zoom meeting is for. For those of you who are on the live stream and don't have access to Zoom, go ahead and post questions on the live stream chat. There may be a delay in my response, but I will be able to see all your questions there. Okay, so let's get this workshop started. Okay, so now that we are on the website, we see our friend Max from Hack Club. Hey Max. Okay, scroll down and take a look at this amazing, fabulous website right here. Yes, that's right. This guide will help you make this exact website you see here. In today's workshop, I will walk you through the fundamentals that will allow you to make this website, but obviously we will go a bit farther and make something a bit more complex. You can't hear me? Okay, well, yes, I can see your question, the shady realm. If you can't hear me, I will turn my volume up a little bit. Sorry about that. Okay, is that fine for all of you? Okay, you can hear me. Okay, that's good. Okay, so let's continue. Sorry about that. Oh, I'm sorry, Amitav, but I think the rest of the people can hear me. So maybe you should check your sound system. Okay, that's good. Okay, so moving on. So before we jump into the code though, we'll be using REPL.it as our IDE. The word IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, or in simpler terms, a place for you to code. I'll give you a moment to click on the link on the website and open up the REPL.it page, and I will do that myself as well. Okay, wait for it to load. Okay. So if you are on there, you will see what I have right here with these three files in the Explorer sidebar: index.html, script.js, and style.css. So let's take a look at the index.html file first. We call this file an HTML file, hence the extension .html. The word HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Here's where I will go into a bit more depth than the guide. A markup language is a computer language that defines the layout of a document. A static website is really similar to a document, right? There are some text, some images, and you scroll down to see more information. Your browser basically takes this HTML file and renders it like how you would open up a document. Another popular markup language is XML, or Extensible Markup Language. You use a XML file to define the layout and format of your app when you are doing Android development, for example. Anyways, what you have to know is that a markup language is used for formatting media, and that's what makes HTML so suitable for web design. Okay, sorry if I'm going a little bit slow here. I really want to make sure that you all have a good foundation moving forward in web design. So the guide tells us here to delete everything. So we are going to do that. And let's add in this code on the guide. So if you take a look at the source code of most websites, you will see a structure that is similar to what we have right here. For example, let's go to our fabulous Los Altos Hacks website. I can right click and click on inspect. See? We have the doc type tag up here and the HTML head body tag here. If you haven't done this before, I would really suggest that you start using inspect element because it is very useful, especially when it comes to copying some techniques from other websites and also debugging your code. You can also do Control-Shift-I to see the inspect element interface, or Control-U to check out the full source code. Okay, so let's talk about the HTML syntax. If you are new to programming, all programming languages have a syntax, which is how the code is formatted. This allows the compiler or interpreter to understand the language because your computer is kind of dumb. It can't really understand anything besides what is clearly defined. So it's kind of like a language because there are some rules, some grammar you have to be familiar with. In HTML, you have these things called tags, which are labels enclosed by triangle brackets. In most cases, you will have an opening tag and a closing tag. Which has a slash. Okay, so the closing tag has a slash before the name. This thing defined by these tags is called an element. So you see here we have an HTML element, and we have a head element, and we have a body element. The reason why you have an opening tag and a closing tag is because sometimes you want to nest elements in each other. For example, as you can see here, the head and body elements are nested inside the HTML elements, right? We've got the opening HTML tag all the way up here and the closing HTML tag all the way down here. Each element has a name because they serve a unique purpose. The HTML element is called a HTML element because it contains the entirety of your HTML document. The head element has its name because it gives the browser some critical information about your document before it gets rendered. Because of this, you shouldn't put anything you want to be displayed within the opening and closing tags of this head element here. You have the body element, which is the bulk of your website, hence its name. This is where you want to put the stuff that you want to display on your website. Finally, we have the doc type, which is not an element or a tag. It tells the browser what version of HTML you are using. If you put HTML here without anything else, it will default to the most updated version, which is HTML5. So you can just put something random in the body tags right now. I'm going to put hello world, and you can click on the run button at the top of the website. Okay, see, the text I put in the body element gets displayed. If you put text anywhere else, they will also be displayed. Let's try that. Hello world 2. Run. And it gets displayed because HTML is designed to be robust that way, but it's just bad practice and will result in some rendering issues. Speaking of bad practice, it's also bad practice to just put text inside the body element without any tags surrounding it. So let's delete this. Okay, so let's go back to the guide. All right. So here, the guide introduces two elements, the H1 element and the P element. Just like the elements we saw before, they have an opening tag and a closing tag. The H1 element is short for heading 1, so as you can probably expect, you can have heading 2 or H2, heading 3 or H3, and so on. Headings up to H6 are defined. So here, I will put in all these different headings. H1 heading 1, H2 heading 2, H3 heading 3, H4 heading 4, H5 heading 5, and H6 heading 6. And just to show you what an undefined element looks like, I'm going to put heading 7 over here. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, so see how all the headings are bolded? And they come in different sizing according to the number that's assigned to them. And see how heading 7 isn't really formatted? It's not bolded and it just looks like regular text, like the text that we put here before, right? Because it is undefined. It just displays the text without any styling. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's first delete this H7 element because it's undefined. And let's take a look at the P element. The P stands for paragraph. And let's type something here. Hello, I am a paragraph. Okay, run. Okay, so see how the text is unbolded? And it just looks like a regular text, like the text that we put here before. So if you're not doing so already, keep clicking on this run button to see your changes live. Now we move on to the next element on the workshop. Tell me if I'm going too fast, by the way. I don't want to rush through this. Okay. So we move on to this next element called the image element. The tag is an img tag. So here the guide teaches you how to attach an image from another online source. Line breaks. Oh yeah, well, let's talk briefly about the line breaks. It's the BR tag, and I will talk about why it doesn't have a closing tag later. But if you just put a BR tag over here, you can see that there is a line break in between my two texts, right? So that is what the line break tag is for. Okay. And also, if you create another paragraph element here, hello, hello, you'll have two different paragraphs with a little bit of spacing in between. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about skipping that. Okay. So let's talk about the image element now. Here the guide teaches you how to attach an element from another online source, but it's bad practice to really get anything on your website from an external online source. Most of the time you want to keep your web sources local so your website doesn't rely on another website. So I'm still going to use this image. I'm just going to click on this link and download the picture. Okay, save. And I'm going to go to my repo.it. I'm going to click on these three dots and select upload file. Okay, let's see where my image is at. Okay. Okay, so see, the file has been uploaded. So now that the image is uploaded onto my working directory or working folder, I can put in the image element. Okay. Here, let's copy this and paste this here. And I see that the shady the shady realm, said you can put \n to have a line break as well. Yes, that is correct. \n is a special character that allows you to break from the line. So yeah, there's really not much to explain about that. If you put that in your paragraph, it breaks the line, like my BR element. Okay, so I put the image element here, and you probably notice that this element only has a single tag, like our line break element before. So elements without a closing tag are called void elements. These elements don't have any contents. And in the case of our image element here, it doesn't really make sense for an image element to have any content other than the image itself. That's why it's a void element. If I run this, then the image will be displayed on my page. But I'm still using an external source here. To use my local file, I have to replace the source with the local file path. So because my index.html file is in the same directory or folder, I can just put the name here, smart dinosaur docs.png. Okay, let's click on run. And there, that's my picture. So a lot of times it is good practice to put // before the file name if the file is in the same directory. So I'm just going to put that here. The dot just stands for current directory, so another developer can tell that I'm getting this file from the current directory, and there's no confusion when we're working together. The slash just means that I'm accessing something within this directory. This type of path, which depends on the current working directory, is called a relative path. It will be a little bit more clear when I organize my file structure later on in this workshop. Okay, so that is images. And at this point of the workshop, we are done with the HTML side of a website. And we're going to move on to the real fun part of web design, CSS. Image can have alt, yes, image can have the alt attribute, but I am going to cover attributes later. And yes, it is a good practice to always have your alt attribute, but I will cover that a little bit later. Okay, so going back to CSS, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. As the name suggests, this computer language is used to provide a style guide for a document, allowing the browser to render it beautifully. You can have an external style sheet. You can have an external style sheet, an internal style sheet, or inline styles. So I'm going to demonstrate what an inline style sheet looks like, an internal style sheet looks like. So an internal style sheet looks like this. You have a style element here with the opening tag and the closing tag, and in between these tags, you just write in the CSS language. I will cover the language obviously pretty soon, but I'm just going to put something here. H1 color red. Okay, so if I click on run, see, I have effectively styled my heading 1 element, but this is bad practice, so we will not be using this internal style sheet. And another technique is inline styles, and inline styles look like this. Put style equals color red. Let's go with green, a new color. Okay, and if I click on run, see, my text turned green. So sometimes this technique is used as a shortcut for a developer to create an element that overrides certain styles in the external style sheet. But it is still often considered as bad practice, so let's delete that. And so the really the only alternative we'll be using is the external style sheet, which is the file you see here, style.css. So according to the guide, we will first link the style sheet to our HTML file by using the link tag. The link tag is often used to relate some external source to our HTML file. So let's copy this over. So let's put that in between the head tags here. Link rel equals style sheet, ref equals style.css. I'm going to explain what all these attributes mean. And actually, we won't be just using these two attributes. We will be using three attributes. The attributes we are going to use are rel and type and href. I'm going to pronounce it href, H-R-E-F, but I'm going to just say href. So the order of these attributes don't really matter, but I prefer this order for consistency. So let's first talk about the rel attribute. So rel equals style sheet specifies the relationship between the HTML document and the source that is linked, which is our style.css. In our case, our CSS source is going to provide a style guide, hence the style sheet relationship. Next, we have the type attribute. So let's put type equals text/CSS. So the type attribute specifies the media type of our link source. The reason why we are adding a type attribute here is because it adds more clarity to our code, and that is always good to have. In the case of style sheets, it is already implied that the type will be CSS. But if we have rel equals alternate, for example, the type is not so clear. So let's put type equals text/CSS here. Finally, we have the href attribute, or href attribute, as I like to call it. It stands for hypertext reference. We'll put the path of our CSS file here. Again, I will add the / here before the path, just as a good practice. Okay, so if I click on run now, nothing is going to happen because there is nothing in my linked style.css file yet. Okay, so let's look at the guide again. Let's return to the guide. So we actually get to stylizing our HTML document. So the CSS syntax is like so. You have the name of your element, in this case, img, and you have your curly brackets after that. So between the curly brackets, you specify the style properties you would like to apply on that element. You specify the name of the property first. In this case, it's width, and then you specify the value here. In this case, 200 pixels. A lot of times we'll have a unit here. There are a lot of units in CSS. You just have to remember them. px stands for pixels, pt stands for points, and so on. You can search that up if you don't know all of the units. So then after the value, you have the semicolon at the end of each property to separate them. In CSS, we call this label before the curly brackets a selector. This selector does not always have to be the name of your element. In our case, img is the name of our image element. So I will be introducing other ways of writing a selector later on. You can see here that there are many style properties you can use, including width, right, as we saw before, text align, font family, background, and color. So I'm not going to do what they're doing here because I want you to experiment with this yourself and try out different properties. That being said, it is about time for you to build your own website however you want it. There are some resources and examples listed at the bottom of the guide, and I will be working on my own website and talking through some new elements and style properties I will be using. You can try to incorporate the HTML elements I introduce or find your own to put on your website. I like to use this amazing resource called w3schools.com. I will also link that in the chat, w3schools.com. You can use this resource to find new elements. You can find an explanation of almost every element on that website. I would encourage you to take this time to build the craziest, most over-the-top website you will ever make. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask the mentors in your breakout room. If you are on the live stream, I will also be monitoring the chat, so you can ask questions there. All right, so let's get started. Just so I'm clear, you're working on your own website, so you don't have to follow what I'm doing. Yeah. Okay. Let me drink some water. Okay, so I'm going to start building my own personal website. So first of all, I'm going to delete the script.js file and my image file. So I never got to the script.js file and what it does, but it is a little bit beyond the scope of our workshop today. Basically, JS or JavaScript is a programming language that will allow your website to be more dynamic. For example, you can run animations and allow your website to respond to button clicks with JavaScript. It has so many use cases that I don't really know where to start. So you can come back to it after you have a solid foundation in programming. Anyways, I'm going to delete these files. And what I'm going to do here is set a good example for you by organizing my file structure first. Okay, so this is a structure that I often use. You don't have to do what I do, but I think I organize my web files pretty well. I create an assets folder, and inside the assets folder, I have a CSS folder, and I have a JS folder. We obviously won't have JS today, but if you have JS, I usually do this. I usually put my JavaScript files in the JS folder. And then we have our images folder inside assets. Okay, so I'm going to move my CSS file, style.css, into my CSS folder. And I'm going to rename it main.css. You don't have to do this, but I just prefer this naming scheme. So don't forget to change the path of my CSS file in the link tag in my HTML file. So /assets/main.css /css/main.css. Okay. There. Now I'm going to add a few tags in my head element. First, I'm going to add some meta tags. So in the workshop, we never really covered meta tags, but when you created a new HTML CSS REPL.it instance here, you see that there are some default, wait for it to load, there are some default meta tags here. So I'm going to talk through what each of these means. So first of all, what a meta tag is, meta tags on your website provides additional information to the browser. So for those of you who have heard of the word metadata, that is exactly what the meta tag stands for. It allows you to define some parameters for your website as well as provide some description to the browser before your website is actually rendered. If I search up some random thing on the internet, for example, Los Altos hacks, right? Oh, wow, our website pops up first. Yeah. So the description you see here is actually defined in the meta tag. So I'm going to first add, I'm going to first add the meta tag meta charset equals UTF-8. This indicates to the browser that the character set I will be using belongs in the UTF-8 category, so that all of my characters will render properly. If you put something like US ASCII here, which is a very limited character set, then things like Chinese characters won't display properly. I can't really show you here because on REPL it just automatically uses the UTF-8 char set even if you specify a different char set here. So I am going to actually do this locally, and you can't see it because you can only see my browser, but it will be real quick, I promise. Okay, so I'm going to create a local HTML file. I'm going to add a meta charset tag without the UTF-8 charset. I'm going to put the US ASCII charset instead to show you that some characters don't render properly. So how did an event appear when you search up Lossless hacks? Can we set that up through the meta tag? Yes, I will get to that later. Okay, so let me first demonstrate this char set thing, the meta char set. Okay, so I'm going to create a new index.html. Okay, and let's type some Chinese in here. Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry, taking a little bit. Okay, so here. So this is my local file, and you can see this gibberish over here. If I go to inspect element, you can see in my head, I put meta char set equals US ASCII. So my Chinese characters aren't rendering properly here. And if I go to my local file and I change it to meta char set equals UTF-8 here, UTF-8, and I reload, look, my Chinese characters are rendering properly. So that makes all the difference. Make sure you have the meta char set equals UTF-8 element tag here. Okay, so next up, another very important meta tag to include is meta name equals viewport, content equals width equals device width. So with this meta tag, I'm basically just defining the viewport. I'm basically just defining the viewport, or the viewport stands for what I actually see to take the width of my device. So I'm specifying the viewport to be the width of my device. So this is important when you want to adapt your website to mobile devices. Obviously, we won't be doing something that complex today, but just know to include this all the time so when you do get to that stage, you don't mess up your mobile layout. Wait, what about ANSI? Well, Chinese characters cannot render properly if you're using an ANSI char set. But you know, there are infinite many, well, not infinite many, but there are a lot of char sets you can use out there. I'm not going to cover all of them, but UTF-8 is the safest choice. Okay, so next I'm going to get to how I can get the event to appear with the meta tags. So I'm going to add the meta name equals title tag. I'm going to put something random here, maybe Leo Lin, and name equals description. Content equals my name is Leo Lin. How about that? Okay, so this is what you actually see when you search up a website, right? So when I search up Los Altos, well, okay, when I search up Los Altos hacks, my meta title tag is what shows up here, and my meta description tag is what shows up here. And these additional pages that shows up here are just meta tags for my my sub pages, right? So because the browser can also find my meta tags in my sub pages, the browser would put that, the search engine would put that on here. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, there's really no way for me to test this out here because you can't actually find my website on the internet right now. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to put a title element, title, and I have a closing tag here. And I'm going to put Leo Lin here. So what a title tag is that it actually specifies the text that shows up right here on the tab. So if I run this, and if I open this in a new window, you can click on this to open it in the new tab or new window. I can actually see that on the tab right here, right, it shows Leo Lin. That is specified in my title element here. Okay. So I'm done with my head. Now I'm going to organize my body. You don't have to do what I'm doing here, but I have a preferred way of organizing my body. So I'm going to create a main element and a footer element. Wait, but if you change the name of the website, what about the icon thingy? What is the content for me? Well, okay, so let's first cover the content. Content just means what goes into this name, right? It's kind of like you're assigning a value to this attribute. In this case, I'm to this property. So in this case, I'm assigning Leo Lin to this property title. And so when the search engine finds my website, it finds this meta tag and says, oh, the title is Leo Lin, so I'm going to use this content. That's what the content means. And for adding the icon thingy, you can also, I'm not going to add an icon to my website, but you can see that we have an icon, a favicon. This is called a favicon on our Lossless Hacks website. And if you see here, there are a lot of meta tags, and we have a link rel equals shortcut icon, ref equals favicon.ico to add the icon on the tab. When I moved my main.css file to my CSS folder, it disappeared. Well, I don't know why that is, because this seems to work fine for me. So maybe you want to create a new CSS file inside the folder. Yeah. Or yeah, it may be collapsed. You want to click on this arrow on the side to see all the files inside your folder. Okay. Thank you, Josh, for answering that. Okay. So moving on. In my main element, I am going to add different sections. So I'm going to use the section element. So I'm going to have 3 different sections. Let's first add the elements here. Okay, good job, you found it. Okay, so I have my 3 sections here, but there's really no way for me to distinguish between the 3 sections. So let's use a new attribute called the ID attribute. You can specify an ID to all of these section elements, and how you do so is by saying ID equals something. And in this case, I'm going to have an about section. So ID equals about, and ID equals, let's put history here, and ID equals gallery. Let's put gallery section here. Okay. So another advantage to adding IDs to your sections is that you would be able to style them individually. So if I put something in these sections, here I'm going to put a title to all of these sections using the h1 element that we previously learned about me. h1 history, and h1 gallery. Okay, so I do that. I'll wait for it to load a little bit. Okay, so the REPL.it server is having some issues. Whew. Sorry about that. Okay, well, I'm going to move on and hopefully this issue will be resolved in the near future. So, yes, the ID is like a name for a section. So I'm going to demonstrate now why that would be an advantage in terms of styling your sections. So if I want to style a specific section, right, if I just put the section name here, like we did before with the image element, then all of the sections will be styled. So actually, it just got rendered. Good job, REPL.it. So if I put color, if I put, let's put background color red for the section. If I put that in my main.css file, if I put this style here in my main.css file, you see here that all of my sections get colored red, right? Because I specified the section tag here. So all of my section elements will be colored red. So I can make it more, I can make it more specific by typing hashtag about. And the hashtag just means that this is an ID. So remember, in the index.html file, I specified the ID equals about. So in the main.css, I can type hashtag and the ID about. And if I put background color red here, then let's take a look. Only the about section gets colored red, right? So that is one big advantage. I can be more specific with my styles. And so let's color all of the sections differently. Hashtag, oh, also I will be getting to classes later, but good job, Parker. Yeah. You know your HTML and CSS. Okay, so let's color the history section as well. Background color, let's make the screen. Okay, and let's make the gallery blue. Okay, let's run this. So you can see here that all my sections are colored different colors. Yay. Okay, so okay, wait, hold up. Okay, so now let's fix the spacing. Let's fix the spacing, yeah. So you can see that there's an ugly white space between each section, and there's a white kind of border surrounding all of the sections. So let's remove that spacing. And the reason why they are so separate is because of margins. If I go to the Lossless Hacks website, again, I can click on Inspect Element, Inspect. Okay. You can see here that there are different spaces inside and outside of an element. So there's the margin first, and the border, and the padding, and the content itself. So the margin is outside of the element and does not account for the element's actual dimensions. So if you specify a width of 200 pixels and your element has a margin of 20 pixels on all sides, then your element will actually occupy a horizontal space of 240 pixels because the 20 pixels are added outside of your element. And the border is just at the edge of the element. You can for example, put black borders around your element. And if you specify a weight for that, half of that weight will go to the outside, while the other half will go on the inside, just like border. And if you specify a padding, the padding is inside of the element. So if you have an element that is 200 pixels wide and you specify a 20 pixel padding, then the actual space that your content is allowed to have would be 160 pixels wide, right? The horizontal space that your content is allowed to have. Okay, so I'm going to remove the margin on all the sections. Let me close these first. I am going to remove the margin on all of these sections first. I'm going to put a section selector here, meaning that I'm selecting all of my section elements, and I'm going to put margin 0. Okay, let's run this. Well, nothing happened. Okay, so let's take a look at our website. Let's inspect element and see what's wrong. Well, you see here that the body element itself has a margin. So let's remove that. Let's actually do body HTML here, and I put a comma here, meaning that I'm combining these two elements. So I'm specifying a style for both of these elements, body and HTML, and I put margin 0 here. And let's run. Well, that's a little bit better, but there's still space in between the sections. Why? I set the margin to be 0 on the section. Well, let's inspect element again. Okay, so I'm looking at my section. There's no margin around my section, but when I go to my H1 element, I can see that there's a margin above and below my H1 element, and that's what pushing all the other elements away. So I can fix that by setting the H1 element to have a margin of 0 as well. Okay. So now I click on run. Yay, no more margins. But it still looks a little bit ugly because the text is kind of bordering, touching the edges. So let's put padding inside this element. When I put padding, remember, I will get space inside the element. So actually, there will be, hence the name, right? Padding. I will get padding in between the sections. So let's put padding in the section styles, padding, and let's test out 15 pixels. See if that's large enough. 15 pixels, perfect. See, now it's all nicely spaced. Okay, that's not too bad. And let's add some content in our sections. So I already have all the titles. So let's add a paragraph description about me first. Okay, so let me think. My name is Leo Lin. I love my baby sister. She is the cutest in this world. Please stand. Okay. Run. Yay. I got my description over here. Okay, so the P element and the headings are kind of hard to see. So let's change those to have a font color of white. So you can specify font color by just using the color property. So let's go to section actually and set color white. So in CSS, there is this concept of inheritance. Basically, if you set some styles in the parent element or the element that encompasses your other elements, then the elements that are nested inside will inherit some of those styles. So for example, all of my contents here, right, my H1 element and my P element are inside my section element. So if I set color white on my section element, everything inside will have a font color of white. Okay. So let's see. For history, let's add a list of things I've done. So in HTML, there are two kinds of lists, unordered and ordered list. An unordered list has a UL tag, so it looks like this, UL. While an ordered list has an OL tag, right? Ordered list, OL. So I will be using an ordered list because I want my history to be chronological. Inside the order list, I will add LI element, which stands for list item. So this also applies to the UL list. So if you have a UL list, you will also be putting LI elements inside to specify a list item. So I will have my LI element here, and let's add some entries here. Well, let's see, what is my history? Well, I fell off my bike, okay, and then I hurt myself badly, and then I wore a helmet, and then I fell off my bike again, and then I didn't hurt myself this time. Okay, so that's the story of my life. Wear your bike helmets and be safe, and let's run. This content is some A1 creativity. Thank you, Josh. Okay, so see how there's a number next to each entry, just like you would expect in ordered list, right? Okay, so now let's make a gallery. So I just happen to have 20 pictures, the 20 pictures of different versions of me. So I'm going to import them here. I'm going to import them here in the images directory. Okay, images. Okay, so I've got these pictures here. Let's put them in the website. Well, let me drink my water first. I'm going to add an image tag here. Source equals dot slash assets slash images slash me1.jpg. And as I think someone mentioned previously, you can add an alt tag attribute. Actually, it is good practice to add alt attribute to your image elements. The text you type in the alt attribute will be what gets displayed if your image has trouble loading. So it is especially important if you are getting an image source, an external image source, right? Okay, so I'm going to copy paste this 19 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay, and I'm going to rename all of these links. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Alright. So I've got my 20 pictures. Let's click on run. Okay, so let's look at these pictures. Wow, sexy. Look at all these fabulous versions of me. And why is this one so big? What the heck? Who is this? Oh, wow. Hello. Okay, so I don't want it to just be IMG because that will apply to all, the style that I want to apply to all the images will apply to them individually. Okay, that doesn't really make sense. Let me rephrase that. Okay, so I want to add a selector which applies all of my styles within the gallery section, but I don't want to it to just be IMG because that will apply to all the image elements, right? Even outside of my section. So instead, I'm going to write hashtag gallery IMG, right? So when you put a space in between two elements, that means that you are selecting an element inside the previous element. So in this case, I'm selecting all of the IMG elements inside the hashtag gallery element. And remember, hashtag stands for ID, right? So I am selecting all the images inside the section element that has the ID gallery. Okay, so I want the width to be around 30% so that there are 3 images per row. Okay, so let's run that. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, but it looks a little bit ugly. There's not a lot of spacing in between, so let's add some spacing with the margin property that we learned before. 1.1% or 1.15%. I think that's, no, I don't, oh, See, this is what happens when you forget to add a semicolon. Styles break. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, so I want to shrink and center this block of images without disrupting the arrangement I have right here. So I'm going to introduce this element called the div element, the div element. Okay, so the div element looks like this. I have my opening tag and I have my closing tag here. What does the percent represent? The percent represents the percent of the parent's dimensions. Okay, so that's a little bit complex. Let me break this down. So in this case, my IMG, yeah, the percent, not the original size. So my IMG elements, right, my image elements, before I put in this div element here, my image elements are inside my section element. So all of my elements have a dimension, right? So when you are writing on the document, right, when you put an image in, or when you have text, they also occupy a certain dimension or a certain size. So in this case, my section element has a size. So so if I put 30% for my width of for the width of the image, that means that the width of my image will be 30% of the width of the section, since the image element is inside the section element. Does that make sense, Cheryl? Okay. If you have more questions, I will be looking at the chat, so I can answer that. So the div element is the most widely used in HTML. It stands for divider, and is used often as a container to more easily stylize an array of elements. So it's easier because you see all of these images are individually defined. So how would you go about shrinking and centering these elements collectively while keeping the 3 elements per row? If you apply a style property that centers that shrinks and centers all of these image elements, what will happen is they will be shrunk, but they will be centered with 1 element per row. If I put a container around them, like a wrapper, if I put a container around them, like a wrapper, then and apply a style property on that wrapper to be centered, then this whole array of image elements will be centered while maintaining the current order. So let's see what that looks like. Let's put the div around the image elements, and so let's define div here, and let's put width equals 80%, and let's have it be centered. So there is a technique that you can use to center your elements horizontally in HTML, and this is actually a pretty commonly used technique. So if you put margin 0 auto, basically what that means is margin 0 vertical margin and auto horizontal margin. So this value here doesn't really matter. It specifies the vertical margin, and I don't want to center my element vertically, but this auto element basically automatically assigns a margin to both sides of this div element, allowing it to be centered. So if I run this, and as you can see here, my images are nicely packed, right? It's shrunk and it's centered like so, and it looks a little bit better. Okay, but I don't want this to apply to all the divs because I would use the div element a lot usually, and so let's specify a class. So the way you can assign a class to an element is by typing class equals, let's say container, right? And unlike the ID attribute, the class attribute can be used multiple times. So essentially, you have a collection of elements that's defined under this class, so you can style all of them easily in your CSS file. And the way you style this specifically in your CSS file is you put a dot and then the class name. So dot container, right? So again, this class name can be anything, right? I can put container blah, and here I just have to change this to container blah here, and that would work. So see, this works. Okay. So now I want to focus more on making the style of my website more modern. So first of all, this font just looks a little bit too old, right? Times New Roman, pretty old font. So let's change it. I'm going to use Roboto from Google Fonts. So let's search up Roboto Google Fonts. Oh, look, I searched up so many times, it already shows up in my history. Okay, so in the Google font website, I can click on the Roboto. Let's go to the Google font website first, and I can click on the Roboto, and I can select these styles. Then I probably don't need the italics right now, so I'm just going to select all of the styles that are not italic. Okay, so I have my selected fonts here, and I go to embed, and I copy this link tag, and then I go to my REPL, and I copy it here. So do note that you have to put the link tag for your fonts before the link tag for your style sheets in order for your style sheets to access these fonts. And normally, as I mentioned before, you want to have your file stored locally. So what I would do usually is I would download all of these fonts and I would put it in a folder and import it through CSS. The way to import it, we may not have the time to get through that process, but if you are curious, you can search up that process yourself. Okay. Oh, okay. So I want to use the Roboto font as the default font for all of my elements. So I'm going to go to main.css, and I am going to use the asterisk as my selector. So this asterisk stands for everything. What I mean is literally everything. All of the elements will be styled if I put the asterisk here. So I put font family, and I put the name of my font, Roboto, and sans serif as my fallback font if the Roboto font doesn't load. And so this is generally how you specify a font for your text. And if I click on run, as you can see, the font has changed and it's a little bit more modern now. Now this looks better, but the colors seems to be too vibrant, right? Red, green, and blue. So let's try something cool here. I want the sections to alternate colors. So let's remove the styles first. Let's remove these styles first. Let's default to black background. Background color black. Okay. REPL.it is a little bit trippy today. Okay. And we default to white font color. So let's run this. All of our sections are now black. There's no way of distinguishing between the sections. So I want the sections to alternate colors. So we can add this new kind of selector, section, colon, nth child even. And what this means is, so the nth child selector matches the nth child of its parent. So a child-parent relationship describes a relationship between a nested element and the element in which it is nested. So for example, the section element is nested inside the main element. So my section is the child and my main element is the parent element. So by attaching nth child to my section element, I am applying my styles to all section elements that are the nth child of their parents. Even and odd just happens to be one of the arguments that can be passed into this nth child selector to select all elements with an even or odd index. Anyways, just know that the nth child selector allows you to choose the first, second, third, even numbered, odd numbered, or whatever numbered element you would like to apply these styles to. May not make too much sense, but once I put the styles here, hopefully it will make a little bit more sense. Background color white, color black. See, my sections alternate colors. And I can add another section here to demonstrate. Section, I won't bother adding an ID to this because this is just for testing. Hello. And see, I have my alternating sections. Okay, so that looks pretty good so far. Okay, so we haven't added the header yet though. So let's create a section at the very top of our main element and give it the ID header. Let's give it a h1 element as the title, and we can put the title Leo Lin, and an unordered list. Let's put an unordered list here, UL, and this will be our navigator. So we will be using this to navigate to the different parts of our website, so like a menu of some sorts. So we will have our list elements here, and we have 3 sections, so let's copy paste this 3 times. And about me, let's just put about. History, that's right. And gallery. Okay, let's run this. So as you can see here, my bullet points here, because it's an unordered list. But there's really no point for me to have a navigator if it is not linked to our sections. So this is where we use the anchor element, which is represented by the A tag. So like so. Okay, so with the anchor element, we can give it a href attribute, which is similar to our link tag up here. When we click on an anchor element, we'll be directed to the link specified in the href attribute. For example, if I put the link YouTube here, okay, if I put it here, run, let's open this in new tab, and I click on about, I am directed to YouTube. So this is pretty useful if you want to create a link on your website. And so I want it to lead to one of my sections though. And this is another advantage that HTML IDs have, which is it allows you to link your element to the anchor element. So if I put hashtag about here, right, and I run, and I click on this about, my page gets scrolled to the about section because my about section has the about ID. So let's do that for all of the sections. Hashtag history, Okay, click on run, and now when I click on any of these links, I'll be led to the sections. I'll be led to their sections. Okay. So now I'm going to modify my list to make it look a little bit better. Well, first of all, I also want to probably modify my title to make it bigger and centered. So let's do that. Let's change the hashtag hashtag heading. What's the ID that I set for this? Hashtag header. Okay. Hashtag header H1. Let's set this to font size 30 points and text align center. Run. Okay, there. That's a good big title. Now I'm going to modify my list. So let's do hashtag header UL, and I want to first make my list style type none, because it doesn't really make sense for my menu to have bullet points here, right? So list style type basically just specifies the style of the bullet points, and so by setting it to none, it's actually like this. There's no quotations. If I set it to none, then that just means remove the bullet points. And let's make sure that we remove the indent as well by setting padding to be 0. Okay. Run. See, the bullet points has been, it's a little bit difficult to see because they have been clicked and they're purple, but there are no bullet points and no indents to my list anymore. And now I probably want to make it more visible by making it white, right? So let's target specifically the A elements here in the header, and let's make the color white. And in addition, I want the whole thing to be centered, so let's make the LI elements centered. Text align center. Okay, and let's click on run. See, now we have a pretty neat menu over here, a pretty simple menu that directs to each of my sections. Yeah. Okay, so let's do the footer now. We have an empty footer section over here. We have 11 minutes left until the free work time is done. So this is a pretty good time to start on the footer. So I'll put a div here with the ID copyright. And then I'm going to put a small element here, just because I want my text to be small. And let's put copyright and copy semicolon Leo Lin 2020. And don't forget the closing tag. So in HTML, there are several special symbols that you can use to display using the and character and the semicolon. I think earlier on in the chat, someone mentioned that as well. So you can just directly enter the symbol if you have set the char set to be UTF-8 in the meta tags, but this just makes makes our lives easier. So let's center this and give it some padding. So let's go to the main.css and let's go to hashtag copyright text align center and give it some padding. 10 px and run. Okay, there we go. It doesn't alternate colors like the other sections because remember, I am in the footer element, I am not in the section element. The section elements are all inside main, and footer is just a separate element. It's just completely separate. Okay. So We have 9 minutes left. Let's embed a video. I'm sure all of you want to add a video to your website. So let's add that before the gallery. How about that? Let's add that before the gallery. So section ID equals gallery, section ID equals video. And let's go find a video on YouTube, youtube.com. I am going to add our own Los Altos Hacks 2 trailer. Okay. And oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so if you go to any YouTube video, there should be an option for you to embed. Share, I believe, share and embed. There we go. So again, you click on share and you click on embed, and there is this huge element here that it asks you to copy, right? So I can copy this and I can paste it in right here. So just in case you're wondering, an iframe element is a common way for you to embed really any widget inside your website. So it just essentially creates a mini website inside your big website. And there, I have my YouTube video. And it's a little big here, but if I go here, the new page, on the new tab, it renders properly here. Okay. Let's make this centered by adding the margin 0 auto next to the iframe. So let's do hashtag video iframe margin 0 auto. Okay, hopefully that works. That does not work. Okay, that's a little bit awkward. Okay, that is a little bit awkward. That was unplanned. I thought it would be centered. I have a lot to learn in HTML as well. So let's see what the problem is. There we go. Okay, so another tip for all of you. Margin 0 auto is an attribute, is a property, a style property that only works on blocked elements. So what that really means is there are different kind of display types for each element in HTML. There's a block display type, there's inline block display type, there's the inline display type. So as the name suggests, right, a block display element, a block element is its own block, and an inline element is kind of like a text, right? It's in a line. It can be horizontally aligned with its siblings, right? Its sibling elements. It can be horizontally aligned with other elements. So in order for margin 0 auto to work, you must have a display type of block, and that's just because it doesn't make sense for your element to be centered when it's in line with other elements side by side. Okay, so now that I have debugged here, let's change this to display block. Okay, so it's 3:25 or 5 minutes until 3:30. So it's almost time to wrap up. Okay, so before we wrap up though, many of you are probably wondering how you can actually make a website and deploy it on the web. Usually you would create a file structure, create some HTML and CSS just like we're doing here, and add content. Except you would write in these files all locally, preferably with a code editor instead of on REPL.it. A text editor would also work in this case. It's just a little bit difficult to format your code properly. You would open this index.html file just like you would any file by double-clicking on it, and you will be able to see your website on your browser just like this, just like when you click on this button here. It will display just like that. So to make your website accessible to others, it's a little bit trickier. You will need to host your website on a web server, and that whole process is beyond the scope of this workshop. Just know that when you are accessing most websites, the browser is literally opening up the index.html document like you would a Word document, and using the CSS file provided to make it look pretty, just like yours. Okay, so it's almost 3:30 p.m., so we should probably be wrapping up our personal websites and start sharing them. No matter what state your website is in, I encourage you to submit your website. You can go to losaltoshacks.com. You can go to losaltoshacks.com/submit to submit your project. I'm going to put that link here in the live chat as well. Oh, okay, making sure that it's clickable. Okay, and I'm going to go to that link myself. Okay, losaltoshacks.com/submit, and I'm going to submit my website. So what is my name? My name is Leo Lin. My website link, I can get my website link by going to my REPL.it and then going to this kind of search bar thing here and copy that and go here back to the form and paste that here. Okay, so that is my website link. And if you are only on the live stream and did not have the opportunity to join the Zoom, you can put a description of your website here. For those of you who are in the Zoom, you don't have to really fill this out because you will have the opportunity to actually present your website in front of your peers later. So Elena, our outreach director, will give you instruction for that in a short while in a Zoom. To view all the submissions, you can go to tinyurl.com/lah-workshop. So I'm going there right now. Currently, I think there's only my submission. Okay, that is loading. Sorry. That is strange. Okay. Oh, I have not clicked on the submit button yet. Oh, that's dumb. Okay, there we go. See, oh, and Daniel submitted his website as well. So you see all the submissions here. If you're on the live stream, you can just check out these websites. Unfortunately, you won't be able to share them, but you can still take a look. Okay, so I am going to take a break from the workshop and come back around 4 p.m. for closing remarks. So see you soon. Bye-bye. Okay, hello everyone. I am back. I hope you all were inspired by some of the website submissions. I was rickrolled by Anthony and Victoria. I saw that you had a picture of Gakuen babysitters, but that was not able to render properly, so I'm sorry that happened. Well, anyways, I hope that you learned a lot in this workshop. This workshop is just your first step in web development and design. There are nearly 100 HTML elements and just over 500 different CSS properties you can learn to use. What's more, you can venture further and learn about hosting, computer networks, databases, and the limitless features our web offers today. This pandemic may have hit us hard, but I hope you can take this opportunity to learn something new. Once again, I would like to thank our friends at Hack Club for creating this awesome resource for us to use today. A few of them also joined us as mentors today. I would also like to thank all of our mentors for taking time away from their busy lives to help our attendees. Finally, thank you all for tuning in to this 2-hour-long workshop. We will be sending out a feedback survey later today to your email, so please fill that out. I wish you healthy and I wish you all the best. This is Leo, your MC for today, signing off. Bye bye.